Okay, welcome back teachers and tutors. Now let's consider Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. And now let's look at the themes. The major themes, the first major theme is that of inner versus exterior guidance. Inner versus exterior guidance is all about how Siddhartha learns that enlightenment can only be reached from within and not by seeking or looking for external religious leaders or religious ways of leading us to that absolute truth. And external teachers cannot teach you enlightenment. And Siddhartha believes that enlightenment can only be sought by looking within. He tried the Brahmins, he tried the Samanas, he tried the Buddhists. But in each of these ways fails in reaching enlightenment through organized religious precepts and teachings. Therefore, he resorts to Kamala, the sensual, sexual world, and he resorts to Kamaswami in the commercial world, in the material world. But neither of these two aspects fail to bring him closer to enlightenment. Therefore, he leaves feeling dissatisfied. And then finally, he meets Vasudeva, the ferryman, whose beatific smile makes him be very impressed. So Siddhartha asks him, what is his greater truth? How does he feel this internal connection to the cosmos? And then Vasudeva tells him that he feels an internal connection to the river, who is enlightened and blissful. And then Siddhartha embarks on a journey to search for an understanding of Vasudeva and the river says. So the river reveals the complexity of existence through sound and image. And Siddhartha meditates on these revelations. In stark contrast, Govinda looks to external teachers for guidance on seeking enlightenment. And Siddhartha leads him to enlightenment. Siddhartha acts as a conduit for Govinda to reach enlightenment. Siddhartha asks Govinda to kiss his forehead, to enable Govinda to see the nature of existence in one instant. And Nirvana comes from within. Now that is the theme of inner versus exterior guidance, while Vasudeva teaches Siddhartha that you can only seek enlightenment through inner wisdom, but Govinda goes on thinking that exterior guidance can lead one to wisdom. But he is mistaken in this belief. Now let's consider the next theme of Siddhartha, which is wisdom of indirection. Siddhartha's tactics to seek enlightenment are more aggressive and deliberate. Ironically, a more indirect approach yields better results. Govinda is dedicated to the practice of Buddhist devotions. Siddhartha rejects these methods after trial and error and relies on intuition for guidance. Govinda tries too hard. Welcome back teachers and tutors. Now let's continue with Siddhartha. Let's consider the motifs of Siddhartha. One of the first motifs of Siddhartha would be that of love. When we consider love, there are three different types of love that we have to consider. The love between Siddhartha and his father, which he rejects to follow the Samanas. Buddha's compassionate love. Kamala's physical and sensual love. And Siddhartha's fatherly love for his son. So basically these different types of love are illustrated in the novel, and it tests his wisdom for worldly attachments and desires. Now let's consider the other motif, that of polarities and the O. There are two different polarities. One is the attachment versus detachment. This would be linked to the samsara versus samana. Samsara means those of worldly desires, attachment to worldly desires. Samsana means those of attachment to non-worldly desires. In other words, detachment from worldly desires. So basically, Siddhartha's experimentation with Kamala and Kamaswami, with Kamala in the sensual and sexual world, and with Kamaswami in the spiritual, with Kamaswami in the commercial world, these types of experimentation on his part testify to his attachment to worldly desires. But on the other hand, Siddhartha's experimentation with the Samanas, with Buddha, and all these different, and the Brahmins testify to his experimentation in the spiritual world, which is that of detachment and samsana. So basically, the balance of these polarities is required to seek enlightenment. You cannot just seek samsara to get to enlightenment, you cannot just seek samsara in order to get to enlightenment. You need to have experienced both and sort of achieved or struck a balance in between them, in between the two polarities, so as to achieve an Om state, so that you can seek enlightenment. This ties in very closely with the motif of love, the three different types of love that I've outlined to you. Okay, welcome back, teachers and tutors. Now let's continue with the symbols of Siddhartha. One of the main symbols of Siddhartha would be the river. The river provides knowledge without words. The water perpetually returns, suggesting the nature of time. And then we have the ferryman's smile. His beatific and blissful smile impresses Siddhartha with his peaceful state, as Vasudeva smiles at Siddhartha with a great enlightened look on his face. And enlightenment is communicated without words. And Siddhartha himself does not exhibit a smile until he has achieved his own enlightenment at the end of the play. And this smile enables Govinda to realize that Siddhartha is like Gautama, someone who has sought enlightenment through his own means, through looking inwards. Now stay tuned for the character analysis of Siddhartha. Okay, welcome back, teachers and tutors. Now let's consider the character analysis of Siddhartha. One of the main characters, one of the protagonists of this text is Siddhartha himself. Siddhartha has a Sanskrit origin for the meaning of the name, and it means he who is on the right path on his goal. And in other words, he who is on the proper road to reaching his spiritual goal. So Hess is not attempting to directly portray the life of Buddha himself through Siddhartha, but to use Siddhartha as a means of discussing a path to enlightenment. And then he's seeking enlightenment by rejecting external religious leaders or external religious dogmas. And he actually tries to seek this enlightenment through a balance of the polarities. He tries the samsara through indulging in worldly desires and worldly pursuits, such as through the sexual and sensual world as experienced with Kamala, and the commercial world as experienced with Kamaswami. But Siddhartha rejects these worldly pursuits in favor of the spiritual path, where he actually comes upon the river's revelation when he meets the ferryman Vasudeva, and then he contemplates on the river's philosophies. He actually meditates near the river and he seeks enlightenment by looking within. Okay, welcome back, teachers and tutors. Now let's continue with the character analysis of Siddhartha. Who is Govinda? Govinda is Siddhartha's best friend, and he follows religious leaders leading him onto enlightenment. And he seeks enlightenment by looking outside as opposed to looking within the path that Siddhartha chose. And there's a final meeting at the end between Siddhartha and Govinda, in which Siddhartha acts as a conduit for Govinda's enlightenment. And he's merely a follower of religious dogmas, but nonetheless he is very determined, because he does not give up. Just because he is seeking enlightenment through external means does not make him any less determined than Siddhartha. So that is it for Govinda. Now stay tuned for the character analysis of Vasudeva. Okay, welcome back, teachers and tutors. Now let's continue with the character analysis of Siddhartha. Let's consider Vasudeva the ferryman. He's an enlightened ferryman. He leads Siddhartha to his spiritual enlightenment. And Siddhartha is very impressed with Vasudeva's serenity and tranquility and peacefulness. And his beatific and blissful smile actually impresses Siddhartha so much that Siddhartha questions Vasudeva about the reasoning behind it, about the motivations behind it. And Vasudeva credits his wisdom to the river. He says that the river's philosophies or unspoken truths actually have influenced him to meditate upon the meaning or purpose of life. And Siddhartha becomes an apprentice to Vasudeva and meditates upon the same teachings of the river.